So let's talk about our agenda for today. As always, we will start with our tech talk, and that is going to be led again this week by Nick. And Nick, what are you going to be talking about this week?
We're going to be talking about importing profile information and like just different aspects of the profile builder
Mhm.
for your students.
Yep, and this was a request, I think, from our surveys that you all fill out at the end of the session sometimes. So that was really helpful for us to know that people want to learn more about how to import information that is not in the that is not, sorry, typical information. So information that you decide you want to include in Accudemia. And as we go along with that presentation, you can feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and we'll also take questions at the end of the presentation as well. And then after that, we'll move on to our general live Q&A. So you can go ahead and get your Accudemia questions ready for Nick or I to answer. And these questions can be about anything in Accudemia. We will do our best to answer them live. If we need to take things one-on-one afterwards, we will get in touch with you. And then finally, we will hold our academic user spotlight segment. And that time is for one of our academia users to come on and talk about how their center or institution uses Accudemia. So our guest this week is going to be Keith Werosh and Lorena Lorena Diaz from Calumet College of St. Joseph. So definitely stick around for that to hear about how one of our clients uses Accudemia, because as you know, it can be used in a lot of really interesting ways. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and hand things over to Nick.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so um, today's topic, importing profile information in academia. So we've got about 3 steps, I would say, that I broke it into is first we have some pre-import kind of setup that we need to do in academia. And then next we would build our CSV import file so that those profile fields will get updated automatically from the import. And then we're going to go through importing and uploading the actual data, which is done through our ADX import tool. Um, so let me go ahead and, okay. So when I'm logged in, to first build those profile questions, and if you're not familiar with what those are, when you go to administration user accounts and we look at, let's say, only our students here, maybe there's some information that I want to know about our students. So if I click on the first student here, they'll have a profile tab. Now I can have any kind of information uploaded about the students, maybe their classification here, maybe I want to know their birth date, if they're a veteran, just anything you can think of, ethnicity, all the different things that maybe I want to know, like when I'm having a session. Maybe I want to know what their current GPA is or something like that. And those can actually be pulled over from another system and added to this profile. So if I'm working with a student, I could pull them up and see that easily. Um, I can also filter reports and things like that based on the information in the profile. So we would build user groups out of those, and then I'd be able to do that. But to get started, we're going to go to Administration Control Panel, and in the very bottom of the website portion, under Profile Questionnaire, we're going to click that. And here's where I'm going to actually build my my profile questions. Now, I've already kind of done this before, so I have some that are already pre-filled. Um, this is just like building a survey. So if you've never been here before, let's say I go to uh, a blank page, so I'm going to go ahead and add a page after this. So you'll notice there's like 1, 2, 3. So these are every page that I have in here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a new question here. So we're starting on page 3, and then there was just an add question button. I'm going to go ahead and edit the question. And let's say I want to know GPA. That should be a good one. So we're going to go ahead and maybe I'll say current, because we want to make sure that that's always current. So I'm going to say OK. And for the answer type, we're going to leave it as open text, and I'll tell you the reason why in a minute. So you have multiple choice and label. Label is just for headings, like if you needed to break the data up, maybe you want to put like a heading in there over the different type of information. And if I choose multiple choice for the answer type, if we look here, so like in classification, I have to know like all the possible answers that there could be. So usually open text is better because like let's say I was gonna go ahead and we'll make another question on page 3 here, and I'm gonna make this their major. So unless I want to create every major in there that we could possibly have, I'm just gonna leave it open text so that it'll accept anything that I upload to that field. Okay, once I'm good with that, I have my questions in there that I want. I'm going to go ahead and just save the changes. And now if I go back to the user accounts and look at student, for instance, we're going to have, maybe each page is a different areas demographics. So this one was advising demographics was the way that was titled. This one was maybe tutoring was page 2. And then this one I didn't give a title, but I could have. Page 3 is the blank title with our GPA and major. Now, I don't know if you saw that, but if we go back to the questionnaire at the very top, there's the title. And if I go to number 3 here and edit page title, I'm just going to call this imported demographics. Because you could actually have your staff complete some of these things too. So like if I had, like in the advising one, for instance, maybe there was questions that the advisors could answer for them. So so that might be why I actually had answers for these like preset. Whereas these ones where they're going to be imported, we're going to just leave open text so that it'll fill those in. Okay, so the next thing I've got to do is build that import file. So we're just going to go ahead and open up maybe a list of students that we pulled from another system. Okay, so these are a few of my students, and you can see I have all their information, maybe more than I really need. So anything that I don't need, I can either delete it or just not map it when we go to do the import. And basically what I definitely need is their ID number. So that has to be correct and it has to match somebody that's in the system. The next thing I need to do is I need to uh, choose which of these groups that I want to import or demographics. So for instance, this may originally come out as like maybe this is their gender, maybe this is their birth date. And from my other system, it's probably just going to have headings like this and then veteran. And maybe this was like classification. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit to make that a little easier to see. And I'll just get rid of some of these that I don't need. We'll leave a few, but I'll delete that too. Okay, so we have our students. We have the classifications. Now, the system needs to know that these are profile values that we want to upload. And typically, if I have something like yes or no, what I'll usually do is do like a replace because you want these to be more of like the values like veteran, non-veteran, that kind of thing. So I'm going to say replace no with non-veteran. Gotta be able to spell. There we go. Replace all. And if I had yes, I would replace those. But the main thing though is to tell the system that these are those profile fields. So I'm going to do at profile, and then open parentheses, and then 1, comma 1. And what that stands for is this is going to say that it's page 1, question 1. And once we have that in there, that's going to let the system know that what this is. And if you have to, you can select that whole heading row, and you can format the cells as text so that it'll let you type that in. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And as text, it doesn't have any issues with it. So I'm going to drag that down. It just copied it over, but now I know that these are the question 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm just going to change the end of those. Now, if I had those new ones, let's say I had another one that was their GPA and um, what was it, major, I want to say. So I would basically just do that same thing for those new ones. The only difference is I would replace, and I'm just going to make up some fake GPAs here. And make up some majors. Okay. And what I'm going to do now, because these were on page 3, so we're going to change this a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and move that down, but we're going to change each one of these headings because this was page 3 and it was the first question. And we can go back and look at that too, just so that you gotta have an idea of what we're doing. So page 3 and 2. And, you know, if you're also doing this for the first time, you might be just filling out on page 1. So all these are page 1 and questions 1 through 4. And then this is page 3, 1 and 2. Okay, once I have all that information in there, I just want to make sure that I save it as a CSV. And then as long as it says CSV, comma delimited, I'm good there. And I'm done. Okay, so that's the file part. Okay, and then the last step to get those to upload to those fields, and let me just double check we have some of those users in there, 333. 4. Yep. Okay, good. So these people, their names will be updated and everything like that. And their profile information should. So we're going to download the ADX tool under administration, advanced import, and download ADX here. We're going to run that setup.exe. And once that is installed, you're going to get on your desktop. Okay, so this is the icon that it looks like. And then once you open that, it's going to ask for your login information. Okay, let me type that back in. I think I changed my password. All right. And then this is the application that it opens, and we're going to go ahead and do a new import job. And we're going to go ahead and point it to that file that I was working on. There we go. Okay. So we can see everything's in there, all the profile columns that we created. On the first column here are all the headings that are in that file. And we're just going to map these on the last column here to what those are. So the first one's going to be the student's ID. Now, if these students already exist in the system, I don't need to map their first and last names or anything else. I really just need that ID so it can update all their profile. And technically, I would be done mapping at this point because the profile fields do not need to be mapped in ADX. It'll know based on the headings which profiles those should be and what they belong to. Now, what I see a lot of folks do, though, is they will sometimes map one of these to the, there's one called user group name. And so if I wanted to have, like, for instance, all my freshmen grouped together in a user group, or all my seniors, sophomore, whatever their classification is, this will actually create groups for me from the import. Now I can only do one of these user groups per import, but I could always run this same file several times, just selecting each column as a mapping. And that's where I was saying, like, the names like non-veteran versus yes, no would come into play, because if I wanted to create groups out of that, in fact, I might do that one because I think I already had the other one uploaded. Then we'll get to see that in their non-veteran versus veteran. So if I go next, okay, it's got 4 students in one group for non-veteran there. And there is, when we're doing uploads of user groups, an option to remove people out of the group if they're not part of it, but it will only touch the groups that are being uploaded. So that's usually something that I would check after it does the summary, is the import behavior for user groups. Check that box. And that basically just makes sure that those groups are always current. And then I do next. The last step is to give it a name. So we'll say profile update and finish. Okay, once that's done, I can go ahead and run it one time. And I just want to show you real quick that I don't actually have that group in there. So let's go to user groups. And if we look for non-veteran, so I don't have that group in there. And then we're going to go ahead and run this import job. Okay, it succeeded. There's other ways to confirm that that went in there, but now if I reset the view and look for my non there we go. So I've got 3 members. Oh, maybe one of them didn't exist, so it wasn't created. If I want to see who's in that group, I can do show selected. And you can see all the ones that actually had a number matched in there are in that group. And also, if I go to now those users, and let's look up some of them. I think this one didn't exist, the 3333 9 times. So let's do the 444. Now, if I pull up their profile tab, so I've got advising still, and there's their things. And I think that one might have already been filled out. But now we can see down here in the new section I just created for imported is I've got their GPA and their major. So, and then let's try that for a few other students. So there's our 555 student, and go to their profile. Oh, and you know what? I actually did have yes and no here. So that's why this wasn't filled out, because it didn't match. So that's what can happen if you have questions with actual answers and then you don't have a matching field that uploads. So, but you can see these ones that didn't have any kind of answers, it just went and automatically uploaded that information. And just to be thorough, the last one, there we go. We have our history major. Yep. So that's it. That's how we upload. Let me go ahead and reshare that because it went away. There we go. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you, Nick. Jerry
Welcome.
says, I didn't get why the yes no person didn't work.
So when we go through and create those profile questionnaires, they have if you actually give responses to those questions, um, they have to match exactly with what's being uploaded. So now if I were to change, I think it was this one, veteran on page 1, question 4. So if I were to delete these options and I put in there, let's say non-veteran and veteran. So I would only specify the answers though if you know that there's not going to be that many, so it's not like a huge task that you have to do. But if I did that, save the changes, and then went back to the import tool and ran it again, when that's successful, I should be able to go now to my users and only students and look up, let's say 555 for instance, and look at Dan, their profile. And now that they match an answer that I had, so that's why I was saying like you might want to just use it as an open field, and like the open ones will always upload to the open text field. But if you provide answers, they do have to match like 100%. So now those are good. And if I look up even, some of my other students like this one, and go to their profile, you can see now it does actually check that off. So yeah, that makes sense.
Sounds like it did. Jerry says thanks. All right. Any other questions about this process? Otherwise, we'll open it up. We have time for one or two questions before we move on to our next topic. But if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, or again, you can put that in the chat.